Now we're moving to the next session of our activities, which is the panel discussions. Before we have our fellow volunteers for the panel discussions, I'd like to introduce them all to you so you know who will be here discussing those Spiritist topics. The first participant is Dr. Sonia Doi. She's a member of the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Maryland since 1990 and currently is the doctrinal director of this same organization. She is also one of the founders and president of the United States Spiritist Medical Association. As you remember, she was just here a couple of minutes ago. So if there's a test, everybody's going to pass, I'm sure. Okay. Professionally career, she's a medical doctor and also a PhD, associate professor of medicine at the Uniformed Services University in Bethesda, Maryland. Our number 2 on the list is Elza D'Agosto. Elza started a study group, Spiritist study group, at her own home in 1997. Then she joined the Spiritist group Love and Light of Newark, New Jersey in 1998. Her home study group joined then the Love and Light in 2000. For Love and Light, she served as the board of directors since 1999 as a vice president, president, and currently she's again the vice president. She is the current secretary of the United States Spiritist Council. She's also a member of the American Translators Association since 1995. And professionally, she had worked for AT&T for 20 years in the financial division and for Prudential Insurance Corporation for 5 years. She has also worked here in San Francisco for the Brazilian General Consulate. Our third guest panelist is Robert Blakely. He has been a Spiritist since 1992. I was even born in 1992, a lot of years. He has been involved in a number of activities at several Spiritist centers, participating in study groups, teaching young folks, young people, age 12 and to 18, giving speeches, performing editing of Spiritist literature, translation from Portuguese into English. In addition to that, he's done editing work on the website explorespiritism.com. That is www.explorespiritism.com, which was developed by the Leon Denis Spiritist Group. Mr. Blakely lives in Coconut Creek, Florida, with his wife Angelica and their 2 children. And now, today's moderator will be Tania Schwartz from Austin, Texas. She is one of the founders and the director of the Kardec Spiritist Group of Austin in the state capital of Texas. Born and raised in Sao Paulo, Brazil, Tania has been active in the Spiritist movement for over 30 years. She's been in Texas for the last 11, after having lived in Sao Paulo, Paris, and California, and continuously worked in the dissemination of Spiritism. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Language and Literature with professional experience in international marketing. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our panelist and our moderator for today's activity.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight, sharing this wonderful moment with all of you. We've been learning a lot today, especially about the transformation of our planet, and we cannot ignore all the catastrophes that we've been going through and what is happening in our world. And when we try to think of all that in face of spirituality, many questions come to mind. And it's about those questions, or some of those questions, we are going to invite our guests to help enlighten us on the answers and how to understand a little bit better what is going on in our lives. So we are going to give to each one of them 5 minutes to answer a question, with the possibility of the others to complement if they have something to add. And we will move on this way through the end of the time that we have. So we are going to start with Sonia Doyle. And the first question is, why does God allow humanity to suffer the perils of catastrophes such as earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, and so on? Big one.
Well, everything in the universe is under the laws of nature, which actually are the divine laws. The same occurs with all these big events, tsunamis, earthquakes, all these catastrophes that we are actually experiencing are operating under the law of destruction, which gives way to the law of progress. So what we see is actually the providence working through the laws of nature to promote these transformations. And we see the transformations actually happening not only at the physical realm, but also at the spirit realm. So I'm sure you all have, been all these latest events that we have seen, especially these tsunamis, and these big catastrophes, they actually wipe out everything in their path. So they destroy all the buildings and everything, destruction of the material world. But something is happening also in the spiritual world. So these events are meant also to promote a transformation of the spirit, to accelerate the progress. As spirits discarnate, they are preparing to a reincarnation of spirits more evolved. We have seen that in this past many years, we have seen already transformations happening one after another. Actually, in the book Genesis by Allan Kardec, the last chapter, chapter 18, the spirits tell us that we are experiencing these transformations which began about 100 years ago. Well, the book is now 150 years. So these transformations started 250 years. We are actually experiencing probably, a more accelerated movement of this. Joana de Angelis reminds us also that these disasters also have a cleansing action, as she put it, a sanitary action, which serves to remove these heavy psychic emanations that are expelled from humans and absorbed by others. So we are actually intoxicated in this heavy atmosphere of old ideas, of evil ideas, and these big disasters help to remove those old ideas so that we can process new ideas, better evolvement of the spirit.
Thank you, Sonia. Anybody else would like to add something to that question?
No.
Okay, all right, that's good. We have several others. So next one to Elza. How does exactly the concept of collective karma or atonement work?
Birds of a feather flock together, right? The laws of affinity. Collective crimes. If we look at the history of humanity, there have been so many instances where entire armies, entire countries commit atrocities against other people. So when this happens, the law of cause and effect will happen sooner or later. And so the spirits who committed these crimes together participated in these horrible atrocities that scourges of humanity will reincarnate in the same area, in the same country, and they will then suffer pretty much what they inflicted on other people. So it's the mob mentality. It's the fact that King David, Attila the Hun, so many conquerors committed horrible crimes against humanity. And there's also something called migration of souls, where entire cultures migrate to an area and start new countries, new cultures, seeded by people like that. But not all of it, because not all of them suffer the same fate. Some escape. So God is always mixing us up so that we can have the example, and the atonement then works because of the example of the ones who did not owe, who are born in that culture, to give a chance to those with the debt to learn and grow and start paying before the calamity happens.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Well, I might add an excellent example of this group atonement was given to us with the circus fire of December 1961. It was explained by mediumistic communication that this fire was an atonement. The victims of the fire were atoning for something that happened way back in the Roman Empire under Marcus Aurelius. And this was a case where they were preparing a special celebration for a gladiator who was coming, and they decided to put a number of Christians in an arena and set fire to it. So many women and children died, and it was a horrible tragedy. Many were trampled by horses who were also consumed in the fire. So this was an atonement that they had to undergo so much further into the future for what had happened way back then.
Mm-hmm. Sonia? Yeah? Yeah, we have to be careful the choices we make, it looks like, huh? With whom we will go, along with. Anyway, next question now, Robert. Will the complete annihilation of Earth ever happen through a cataclysm of some kind?
Okay. Well, the complete annihilation of the Earth, I know that this, according to Spiritism, this is not going to happen. Though I guess the sun is going to die, it will cease to be in its present form in about 5 billion years. So we have to worry about that. A few more million years after that, it'll deteriorate some more. But I hope by then we'll all be dematerialized, perhaps. We won't need this Earth in its present form. But according to Spiritism, the Earth has to transform slowly. We don't want to destroy an entire generation. The present generation will gradually disappear, and the next one will take its place also gradually. So everything is gradual. So no 2012 movie such as we've seen, no apocalypse now. So it is experiencing cataclysms now, of course, and we've seen more of that. As was mentioned, the Japan earthquake and tsunami, the earthquake in Haiti, all of that has accelerated our appreciation of the fact that we're all together, united on one planet, and hopefully is accelerating our feelings of compassion and love for our fellow human beings, setting aside the divisions of race and nation and religion. So these cataclysms do occur, but slowly over time we are changing. As the Spiritists say, the more important changes are our moral changes now. We've seen what has been called the Arab Spring take place. We've seen it start in Tunisia, now it's gone on to Egypt and many other countries. We have the terrible conflict going on in Libya. all of this is a moral cataclysm that's taking place. And so we are seeing more and more of this. And I feel very hopeful about this. There is a great deal of struggle, as also Spiritist literature says. The old order is passing away slowly, but there are still many death rattles, shall we say, going on with this. So we have a long way to go, and it's nothing, there are sudden changes, but there are also slow changes taking place, and this will take place over a long period of time.
Thank you. Sonia?
I'd like just to add a comment. That's an interesting question because, we are witnessing all these catastrophes now, and people are fearing, when is the next one? When is the next one? When is all this going to end? Or are we all going to perish? And actually, the spirits are telling just the opposite. Once these tectonic plates accommodate, and all this volcanic energy is expelled, Earth is going to be more in harmony. And we are actually, all this is a preparation for the new era that's coming, the regeneration. So we are actually not hoping, but looking at a better future, not an annihilation of Earth.
Thank you. Elza would like to add something? So we'll go back to you, Sonia. Next question is yours. What is the involvement of the spiritual benefactors during natural disasters?
We know that there is a continuous interaction between the incarnate and discarnate world. And the benefactors would never let us suffer alone. They're always there. And in this new book, published by Divaldo Franco, The Planetary Transition, there's a lot there that could explain all about the work of benefactors during these tragedies, during these calamities. And of course, we don't have time, but I would encourage you all to read it because there's so much information there. And the most interesting information are that the benefactors are there from the beginning of it, helping at every point, helping those who are discarnating in that slip of a moment, and they cannot even perceive that they have passed. And they help to bring them to light, to make them understand the passing. They are helping others to find their way through. They are helping the ones that were left behind, suffering so much. So this is a tremendous amount of work. And the other interesting point that is brought to us in this book is that the benefactors are also working already for the new era to come, that is coming. And they are preparing reincarnations of more evolved spirits, and spirits that are coming from other worlds, from worlds of more elevated moral status. And the way these spirits will help is because they have no links with our past. They have no links with the spirits that are incarnated here. So they can work freely, setting examples, helping to build a new world with higher moral values. So there are so much that the benefactors are doing during these tragic times. We have to acknowledge that we are not alone, that we are being helped. And it's important that when we look at these tragedies, that we don't just look at the shocking experiences at the material domain, that we see this as a progression of spirits, a liberation so that the spirits, some of these spirits are ready to accept new ideas, but if they remain in this world, they are immersed in the ideas that are propagated here, they cannot actually evolve. When they are taken away, they have the opportunity to embark in new and better ideas.
Thank you. Anything else about this question?
I'd just like to add that we need to really appreciate this very delicate and difficult task that these benefactors have. They know what is going to happen, the good and the bad, and they must participate in it and protect us and help us as much as they can, and remind us that humanity is not without supervision. Everything we do is based on a mentoring system, and these highly evolved entities are helping humanity all along. And that's a very, very difficult task to do. And it must require quite a bit of hierarchy and work to reach that level.
I'd just like to add that, as they said in Star Wars, be mindful of your thoughts, Anakin. I love to throw Star Wars in there now and then to become more attuned to the messages that are being given to us by the higher spirits.
Thank you. So we go back to Elza. Why do
Last question.
Last question. I cannot promise anything. Why do good people also perish in the midst of great-scale natural calamities?
To believe that there are innocent victims is really not to believe in God. The wisdom of our Creator in the universe, in our wonderfully effective bodies, lead us to think that there is justice. No one is going to perish without having even chosen to be in that position. As we know, we have a life plan. We are born with a life plan. We incarnate with exact ideas of what we have to accomplish. If we read Heaven and Hell, which is my very favorite book, where Kardec interviews spirits about their passing, it is our mistake to think that a spirit or a soul is miserable and suffering and it's the most horrible experience. When we read this book, we find out that many of them chose that discarnation process and are very happy to have gone through it and put it behind them. It's for instance, an analogy, somebody who has a tumor and knows that surgery and medication and convalescence, all of this is going to be very, very hard to live through, but it is better than living with the tumor. So they choose surgery, go through that period, difficult period, and then they're happy that it's behind them. So there are no innocent victims anywhere. It takes a lot of maturity to realize and to learn from this doctrine that to each according to his or her own merit. And we have free will, and we do choose the way that we're going to live. We're going to leave this world. And there's another thing that I learned a while back, is that there are times when someone knows, a spirit knows that something is going to happen in an area, and they know that enduring that trial, they are going to gain tremendous spiritual advancements. And so they ask to be born in that part of the world where that problem is going to occur, because they know the advancement. So they go through it, and our mistake is to think, oh, how horrible, children, forgetting that that child is in that stage at that time, is not really a child, is an adult spirit who temporarily has that form of a child. So we forget that choices were made. And from heaven and hell, we learned that they are actually happy to go through that and be free from it. The first story in heaven and hell was about the child who was in a hospital. He had a mission. I'm not going to tell you the whole book. This is a very interesting case. He suffered tremendously. People just couldn't stand to see this child suffer. And when he passed, all he could do is say, "Did I do okay, God? Am I all right?" He was not unhappy. It is our mistake to think that everything that happens to us that is negative is a horrible experience. It's actually an experience that makes us stronger and helps us acquire our evolutionary steps. Baby steps, as they are a lot of times. But there are no victims. There are no innocent victims. Otherwise, God would not be just, and God wouldn't be God. And we know that we cannot even understand the magnitude of God's wisdom. We haven't begun to understand that, but we know enough to say that there's justice. The world is all right. There's nothing wrong with the world. Everything is following a plan. In our planet, Jesus' plan. But there's a plan, and progress is being made. Evolution is the law. So there's nothing wrong with the world.
Thank you. I don't know if somebody else would like to talk a little more about that.
Well, just that I totally agree with what you said. We can't know everything that God knows. Our intellect will never be the same as God's. And no matter how much we improve, we'll never get that far. We don't have enough time. And there's so much, if we just look up at the stars, there's something like 100 million stars in the Milky Way galaxy alone. And there are galaxies upon galaxies, and it's just the immensity of the universe is just so great we can't comprehend it, and what God does. And so many factors that we're unaware of, so that we really have to check ourselves, watch ourselves in questioning God's wisdom, where what we perceive as one good person dying.
Thank you. Sonia, anything there? Okay. All right, so I guess who adds gets the next question. Robert, you're next. Why do spirits who worked in the Spiritist codification keep on telling us to be hopeful when all of these catastrophes are happening?
Okay. Well, as you can see, I'm using notes here because I was afraid my mind would go blank up here. But, okay, why do we need to be hopeful? Well, for a number of reasons. As I mentioned before, our thoughts create our personal psyche, our psychosphere, and it contributes to the general environment. And by remaining hopeful, steadfast, we can avail ourselves of the positive vibrations. And I am going blank, sorry. So we're getting rid of the poisons, but there is. We can gain peace of mind from the fact that every time a calamity occurs, what follows is prosperity and progress. Scientists and engineers find solutions to the problems that we have so that they will not be repeated, And there is the moral progress also. We are prodded along towards a universal brotherhood. We see our brothers and sisters, instead of seeing, as I said before, the nations, the races, and so on. And we feel compassion, and this is something that is prodded along by these catastrophes. And so we need to remember the cornerstone of Spiritism, which is, without charity, there is no salvation. And the opposite of that, of course, is, instead of charity, would be selfishness and pride, instead of charity and humility. So we need to see that these are obstacles to our progress, selfishness and pride, and try to remember that this cornerstone, which really was the teaching of Jesus, that through this we will find our way to God, and through this our transformation, our work towards a world of regeneration will be completed.
Mm-hmm. Anything else about that?
I would like just to make an analogy very quick. When I see these tragedies, I think of a tree that we're growing, and once now and then one leaf gets old and comes down, another leaf comes down. But there are times when we need to prune that tree so that in next spring it will come much stronger with beautiful blossoms. So I think the spirits are telling us, just wait for the blossoms. Now we are undergoing pruning.
Yeah, hang in there, right? But we have to do our part too, not just wait, right? Yeah. That's good. So we have one extra question, but it'll be nice to you. I'll let you choose who's going to answer this time. Okay? It's our last question, and then after that you can make your final, you can give us more hope, right? Saying something good for us for this end of discussion, if you like. So the last question is, as far as individuals who tell us they can foresee the future, can a prophecy be accurate? Who would like to take that one?
Okay.
Anything is possible. Depends on who's the prophet. I mean, anything is possible, of course. Prophecies have existed throughout the history of humankind, and some of it is correct, some of it isn't. It was understandable in the beginning. It was used to educate people. The primitive villagers, the elders would say, if you don't do this, you're going to be punished, and that was a prophecy, and then the person was punished, and that started working that way. And then the mentors, the benefactors, used these prophecies to educate us. Everything is a lesson. Everything is an opportunity to grow and learn. So even if you analyze the situation, you decide that that prophecy did not come true, that's still a learning process. Discernment is very, very important. It's a big lesson that we need to learn. And when we hear a prophecy, we analyze the source. We look at the outcome, and we could figure out whether the entire prophecy came true or just part of it. It is part of being human, is to predict bad news, right? Prophecies are never about good news, are they? I never heard a good one. All these prophecies are bad. So we could learn from them. They could be true, and they may not be true.
Would you like to add something, Robert?
Oh, sure. Prophecy, the accuracy of prophecy it's about discernment. It's about the ability to see more clearly than your fellow sitting next to you. It's about being more attuned to to God's thoughts. And of course, only the highest, purest spirits are privy to God's thoughts. But it's about that. I remember a story from No Solar. This is simply about discernment, where a woman comes before the gate, and Andre is there, and then some other worker with him. They want to let the woman in, but someone else who is there, who is a guard at the gate, who has that position of authority for a reason, because he is more discerning, he says no, and they are shocked. Well, this woman needs our help. Why don't you let her in? And because he is more discerning, he says, do you see the black spots? Do you see? And explains that she had performed a number of abortions while on Earth, and asks her a few questions about that, and she becomes indignant right away. Before she was stooping and hunchbacked and appeared to be weak and helpless, and then suddenly she stands upright and becomes arrogant and defiant and storms away. I don't need your help. They didn't see that, he did. And that's the whole point, that those with higher, the purer spirits, certainly those who are discarnate, can discern more than the incarnate. We're impeded by the matter, and but more than simply being discarnate, it's about being in tune with God's thoughts. That's what makes it more accurate.
Sonia? Yeah. And we have a few extra minutes if you'd like to leave us with a nice word of wisdom in the theme we're talking about, and before we conclude.
Start with me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, what we have learned is that through all these sufferings, we have to take the opportunity to learn, to transcend, to evolve, to progress. As was mentioned here during this discussion, after every one of these tragedies, we see more progress, being that scientific progress, technological progress, even moral. We have seen, we have witnessed in this last tsunami in Japan, after that terrible tragedy, how that served as an example to the whole world. When the population of Japan reacted in such a harmony, in such an orderly form, with respect to one another, with compassion to one another. Nobody actually expected that. They were expecting that they were going to be pillaged, and all that didn't happen. So we always have something to learn. And this is, again, through all this tragedy, God has a purpose behind it.
Thank you. Elza?
Just quickly, the question about why do the mentors or the spirits try to help us be hopeful is to remind us that no one is disenfranchised, that we have opportunities, we have mentors. The entire universe is based on mentoring. Even the planets depend on each other's orbit. The sun warms us up. The moon affects our tides and all that. We have enough teachers. If we cannot understand science, there'll be philosophy. If we're not ready for philosophy, there's religion. If we can't learn from this, we'll learn from that. It is all a learning opportunity, and the spirits tell us often in these books that we read that the good can use the bad always. Some good can and does come out of every bad situation that we have to live through. So there is hope, because as Chico Xavier said, it will pass. everything will pass and better days will come.
Thank you. Robert, you have 2 more minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Okay. Well, as you said, something good comes out of the bad. Just a personal experience I was thinking of. I've been through a few hurricanes, being from Florida. And I remember a hurricane particularly that made us neighborly, at least for a time. And that's what we get from the catastrophe. There was no power. Air conditioning didn't work, which in Florida is a must. It's very, very hot in South Florida. And people came out of their houses and looked at each other and said, "Oh, you're my neighbor." Because we didn't realize who we had for neighbors. "Oh, look, how many kids you have and how many kids I have." And our kids are playing together in the street. And they were sharing what they had. Somebody had a freezer full of meat that would go bad, so we had a big barbecue. And we just were neighborly to one another. We helped each other out. You don't have this, I have that. We shared, and it was a wonderful thing. It lasted for about a week and a half, and then the power came back on. So, but that's what, hopefully, from these great catastrophes, we will learn to do something more lasting in the way of friendship and brotherhood.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for our guests, and I would ask you to help me thank them with a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you.